The message to drug traffickers is unmistakable. Your time of impunity is over. A new kind of operation has begun, built to protect every life from the storm of poison flooding this nation. This time, America acts with resolve, without hesitation, with the strength that comes only when a country has had enough. A nationwide strike unfolds, over 5,000 arrests, hundreds of millions in seized assets. From Chicago to 20 major cities, hidden networks collapse. Yet the real shock wasn't in the numbers or the cash, it was in who wore the handcuffs. Those once trusted to protect became the center of betrayal. Among them were people who once carried badges of honor. When gatekeepers open the gates for crime, the war changes. The enemy is no longer outside the border, it's inside the system itself. If you believe honor still matters, stay with us. What you'll see next reveals how deep this fight truly runs. At 4 a.m., as cities slept, thousands of agents moved as one. The operation, called the Surge, had been in motion for months, coordinated across Chicago and 20 other metro zones. It wasn't just a raid. It was a storm aimed directly at the most powerful criminal empires in existence. It became the largest offensive in decades. Drug labs shuttered, secret warehouses exposed, piles of cash and weapons seized. Chicago, America's crossroads, turned from a hub of poison to a fortress of justice. For the first time, the flow was stopped and a line had been drawn. An agent whispered, "Everything moves through here and the money always finds its way back." But as the arrests mounted, a colder truth surfaced. Some of those in handcuffs weren't cartel soldiers, they were sworn officers. And that's when the real war began. They sold their badges, sold their oaths, traded honor for profit. The battle was no longer between law and crime, it was between faith and betrayal. When corruption infects those meant to uphold order, one question remains: who defends justice when justice itself is compromised? The fentanyl crisis continues to steal lives across America. For months, investigators traced its roots, not just where it began, but why it never stopped. The networks behind it no longer resembled street gangs. They evolved into corporate machines operating across continents. They function like multinational corporations, accountants, chemists, logistics experts, private enforcers. Their product isn't contraband, it's mass-produced death. From Chicago, shipments spread through the East Coast, leaving heartbreak in their wake. Over 100,000 Americans die each year. Morgues overflow, schools stock Narcan beside fire extinguishers. This isn't just crime, it's an underground economy built on blood. Secret super labs in Mexico produce millions of lethal doses each week. The poison hides in trucks, cargo containers, even in migrant flows. But their true power isn't in violence, it's in money. Dirty cash washed clean through banks, crypto, and shell companies. Those funds move through fake corporations, feeding into real estate, trucking firms, clubs, even campaign donations. A shadow economy runs parallel to the legitimate one. Every clean dollar is built upon a lost life. If you believe this cannot continue, share this message. Someone out there needs to wake up. Inside the data rooms of federal agencies, months of quiet analysis connected the dots. Identical networks appeared in more than 20 cities. Stash houses, front companies, mirrored cash routes. A machine running with cold precision, hidden in plain sight. When the evidence was complete, it was no longer suspicion, it was a blueprint. At 4 a.m., October 15th, the Surge launched. Helicopters cut through Arizona's dark sky as teams breached suburban homes, pill factories pressing millions of fake tablets, each laced with enough poison to kill. Within 1 week, thousands arrested, tens of millions seized, ledgers decrypted, and industrial-scale labs dismantled. But this was only Phase 1. 3 weeks later, Phase 2 targeted another brutal organization, one that expanded through fear and violence. At the port of Long Beach, agents uncovered tons of precursor chemicals hidden inside containers. In Miami, luxury estates were seized, silent monuments to money laundering. Dozens of dark financial networks fell, striking directly at the beating heart of organized crime's economy. In Houston, convoys of trucks were intercepted beneath crates of produce, lay hidden weapons destined for private armies. The war had evolved beyond crime. It was now an industrial supply chain of chaos. When 22 divisions moved together, there was nowhere left to hide. From Boston to Kansas City, New Jersey to Maryland, local pipelines collapsed overnight. Over 5,000 suspects detained, hundreds of millions seized. Yet after the applause came silence because everyone knew this war wasn't over. The next battle would strike much closer to home. Beneath the victory lay a deeper fear. The enemy wasn't just beyond the border anymore. It had infiltrated the system itself. This fight was no longer about catching criminals, but reclaiming trust. The question that lingers: do we have the courage to confront our own shadows? After the first victory, a new front opened. One without gunfire, fought through numbers and wire transfers. The financial war began. Because the true power of these organizations wasn't in violence, but in their ability to quietly infiltrate through money that no longer looked dirty. That money flowed through hundreds of front companies. Legal invoices hid criminal origins, contracts disguised corruption. Layer by layer, they built walls of legitimacy. The real question was no longer who pulled the trigger, but who signed the checks that kept the machine alive. Once laundered, the funds re-entered the system as clean capital, buying homes, starting companies, even financing politics. Everything looked legitimate, yet every transaction carried manipulation beneath. Power no longer came from weapons, but from the ability to shape laws using tainted wealth. Investigators found accounts that funded both smugglers and public officials. Bribes no longer looked like envelopes, they looked like contracts and donations. It was influence disguised as progress, blurring the line between legal and criminal until they became indistinguishable. Federal units realized corruption wasn't theoretical, it was systemic and deliberate. Across states, officers and officials stood accused of aiding smugglers, using their authority as a shield. The gatekeepers had become collaborators, and the cost was national security itself. Internal reports revealed warnings ignored, evidence buried, and supervisors complicit. This wasn't coincidence, it was infrastructure. A structure built from pressure, fatigue, and greed, feeding on institutional cracks that widened with every crisis. Years of emergency hiring had left oversight thin. Thousands recruited with rushed clearances. Background checks shortened. The faster the system grew, the weaker its armor became. And through those cracks, corruption seeped in slow, silent, corrosive. Since 2024, waves of indictments followed officers, inspectors, supervisors caught working for the very groups they swore to fight. The cartels stopped bribing individuals. They began feeding entire bureaucracies. The question shifted: how do you save the shield when the cracks come from within it? These revelations forced a historic shift. When the enemy behaves like a global terror network, law enforcement alone isn't enough. A landmark decision followed. Major trafficking groups were officially classified as foreign threats. A new chapter in national defense had begun. Minutes after the order was signed, joint command between defense and law enforcement took effect. The message was firm: America will not remain silent while its people suffer. This was no longer policy. It was a mission rooted in survival and unity. A commander declared, "If they operate like insurgents, we will respond as defenders." It wasn't a threat, but a promise that the nation would not stand idle while lives are lost. For the first time, multiple agencies moved under one coordinated plan. This new doctrine transformed drug enforcement into national security. The objective shifted from arrests to dismantlement. 22 divisions and 7 international task forces launched synchronized operations under one banner, the Surge. But behind the success lay strain. Agencies stretched thin, systems worn by endless demand. Every day, more than 150 Americans still lose their lives to synthetic poisons. The enemy adapts faster than bureaucracy can respond, and that's the cost of complacency. The financial war continues quietly. While assets freeze, shadow crypto networks thrive beneath the surface. Yet the greatest threat remains internal faith in the badge, shaken by betrayal within its own ranks. Restoring that faith may be the hardest battle of all. After thousands of arrests and exposed scandals, public trust fractured. The haunting question lingers: what happens when the system that guards the nation needs guarding itself? When the line between justice and survival blurs, who holds the shield? The Surge wasn't just an operation, it was a reminder that safety must be defended every single day. In the shadows of chaos, America proved something vital, that courage still exists. Not all kept their oaths, but those who did fought with integrity. They remind us, true bravery isn't found in weapons, but in the decision to stand firm when darkness demands surrender. The surge became more than an operation. It was a declaration that unity still matters. When agents, soldiers, and citizens stand for one purpose, the ground itself trembles. This wasn't just a battle for safety, it was a reclaiming of national dignity. And now the question reaches every viewer. Do we continue this fight or let the system crumble? Will we protect those standing between order and collapse? The war is far from over, but one truth remains. As long as courage and conscience endure, America will never fall.